Okay, hello everyone, it's me again, and I just wanted to make this video to talk about what I'm going to be league starting with in 3.21 Crucible, and yeah, big surprise, it's a boneshatter Juggernaut. It's a pretty well-established build. Um, so in this video, I just briefly wanted to talk about like three things. First of all, why I think boneshatter Juggernaut is going to be particularly good next league. What changes happened in 3.21, and also why I decided to build this character the way that I am building it. Um, so yeah. So why do I think Boneshatter Juggernaut's going to be good next league? Well, first of all, it's a very powerful meta build. It's basically the premier melee build right now. There's basically no other melee build that can achieve this much damage on this budget, which is basically like SSF viable gear, as you can see here. And with this build, we're able to achieve pretty good stats, 78k armor without flasks, 6 million damage with just Protector and War Chief up. And then, yeah, there's not much to say here. 5k life on a Juggernaut feels pretty good. And anyway, so in Crucible League, it's kind of similar to Ultimatum League in that you basically have to run around in like a donut thing, in a donut-shaped arena, and kill monsters that are spawning. And they did say that as the encounter progresses, the monsters are going to spawn with more and more DR. So there's basically going to be like a constant amount of monsters on the screen, and some of them may have a lot of damage reduction. So you can basically assume that when you're doing this league mechanic, you're going to be getting hit a lot. And which ascendancy in the game is the best at mitigating a lot of small hits? Well, it's Juggernaut because of Unbreakable, right? 8% of your armor applies to elemental damage taken from hits. So not only do you have a lot of armor to protect against physical hits, but also you basically prevent like half the damage of like an elemental hit of like 1,000 to 2,000. And then anything smaller than that basically does like 0 damage to you, right? So I just think like the defenses of Juggernaut are going to feel really good in Crucible. And then another reason I think this build's going to be good is because of the item crafting system. So Boneshatter Juggernaut is a build that uses a two-handed weapon, and as we saw in the league reveal video, in next league you can put item trees on your weapons, and then they can sometimes have additional support gems. So like in theory, if you get a Despot Axe with like socketed gems are supported by level 1 Fortify or level 1 Ruthless or something, it basically allows you to gain an extra link. So in general, next league, I'm just excited to play builds that require two-handed weapons, just so that you can get more use out of the Crucible tree, I think. So that's basically my reasons for playing this build. And then, so what exactly happened in 3.21 to Boneshatter? So not much has happened. I would actually say that overall, Boneshatter got a small buff overall. You just got a little bit more life and a little bit more armor and res compared to previous leagues. Although the loss of Eternal Damnation is sad, but it's not a huge deal because you can get a pretty decent rare amulet in its place. So sorry if I keep sniffing. I have like really bad sinus congestion right now. But anyway, so with regard to the mastery changes, well, first of all, the tree is basically the same. Basically nothing changed in the tree, so that's great. And then with regard to the mastery changes, the most important one is this one here, 15% increase max life if you have no life modifiers on your body armor. So basically this allows you to run a body armor with 3 armor mods. You can actually get more armor than this. This is just tier 3 in this PoE. So it allows you to run triple armor to maximize your armor value on your body, which can allow you to get like 3,000 armor. And then that combined with Unbreakable, basically it doubles that, and then it gives you a tremendous amount of protection against physical and elemental hits. And then you take this mastery here and basically get 15% max life for free. And one thing to note is at the time of making this video, PoE does not currently support this because it's in red text. So you have to add it here in custom modifiers. So there's that. Another mastery that changed is this armor mastery here. So previously, the one that you would probably have wanted to take was Reservation Efficiency of Determination. However, on this build in particular, boneshatter never really needed the Determination Reservation Mastery. So you basically gained +1 to all max res for free on this build, which is great. And I think the last one that changed, oh, there's two more. Another one that changed was this attack mastery here. Previously, you would take Ruthless Hits Intimidate, but they moved that mod to two-handed mastery, so you're just not going to take it anymore. But they added this nearby enemies are intimidated while you have rage. And that in conjunction with the axe mastery that gives you 1 rage on hit, basically allows you to always have rage. And if you always have rage, nearby enemies are always going to be intimidated. So in theory, this is a buff because it allows you to have more consistent application of intimidation. However, we don't really know like what nearby is. We don't know if it's like 10 meters or 20 or 30. I wish they would like tell you what nearby really means, but you know, it's whatever. And then the last mastery that changed was the physical mastery over here. Previously, this would allow you to get 20% impale chance. Unfortunately, that got removed, but it's not that big of a deal because they added this 10% more max physical attack damage, which, I mean, it's nothing special, but it gives you 350k damage with 1 point, so it is efficient to take that. And then the 20% impale chance that you lost there can be made up for using a Eater of Worlds implicit on your gloves. It starts off at level 5 and then it goes 5, 10, 15, 20. So the way to get this is you would probably want to try to get 15% using the level 3 Ichor. And then you would use like an Orb of Domination and try to get 20%. And then you would craft on strike skills after. That would probably be the way to go for that implicit because it is level 4. So it's kind of annoying that they made Impale harder to get, but it's not that big of a deal. We're still able to hit 100% Impale chance, as you can see here, using a combination of that glove implicit, the Harpooner wheel, the Merciless Skewering wheel, and also by anointing Forceful Skewering. So 100% Impale chance is achievable without a Watcher's Eye, which is great. And as you can see here, getting Impale chance on boneshatter is really important because if you see here, my boneshatter DPS is actually only 3 million, but Impale gives me an additional 2.4 million, right? So definitely critical to get Impale chance as close to 100% as possible. And that's basically all the mastery changes. So in summary, you basically got like more life, more res, and like more armor for free. Oh, there's this other mastery. They did add this other mastery here, 100% increased armor from equipped boots and gloves, but it seems to be really underwhelming. I don't know why it's only giving me 1000 armor, so I'm just not taking it. But yeah, that's whatever. Yeah, and I think that's it for the changes. Overall, slight buffs, which is surprising considering how strong this build was already. But yeah, it's always good to hear because I do love this build. And then finally moving on to how I built this character. So there's actually a lot of ways to build boneshatter. This is like the vanilla boneshatter variant, which is basically, you know, you get a stick that has physical damage and you whack the enemy, and then you get a little bit of trauma from boneshatter, which gives you 4% more damage per trauma. And then you get Juggernaut, so every time you hit yourself, you prevent the physical damage and then you regenerate it. And if you're ramping to like 40 stacks, you're eventually going to get like 5,000 life regen per second from untiring. And that allows you to sustain boneshatter at like 40 stacks, which is pretty good. Yeah, this is like the vanilla boneshatter build that you can play. And most of this is pretty standard, so I'm not going to like go into everything in depth. You basically just take all the life nodes available to you, and then you take all the armor nodes that are efficient for you, and then you can grab like all the axe nodes. It is really important to get all 3 axe wheels because you really need all the masteries. Like 40% increased effective onslaught is like free 8% MS and attack speed for free. And then gain rage on hit is critical for scaling your damage in boss fights as well as enabling intimidation. And then also destroying enemies is just like a really great defensive layer and it looks really cool. Oh yeah, other than that, another node that I think is a wheel that I think is really important is the Kinetic Impacts wheel. So I think this is really good because it gives you increased stun duration. And stun duration basically translates to area of effect. As you can see here, boneshatter, whenever you hit an enemy, you deal a pulse, you do a pulse, and the pulse has 15% increased AoE per 0.1 second of stun duration. So the more stun duration you get, the bigger your AoE and the better your clear is going to feel, basically. Um, and then, other important wheels, of course, are Tribal Fury. Melee Splash is just really important. It allows you to have just the most insane clear, allowing you to one-tap packs. In addition, if you're in situations where there's two enemies, such as if you pop open a Shrieking Essence, this will basically allow you to deal double damage because you have additional strike from your glove. So you're going to hit each enemy one time, and then the melee splash will hit each enemy an additional time, dealing 50% of the damage. So you basically get double damage if there are two enemies next to each other. And I think this is going to be especially good in Crucible, because if you get like an overwhelming amount of monsters in a very small Crucible area, you're basically going to be like splashing everything. It's going to be insane DPS. So that's also really important. What else is important? A lot of this stuff is just standard, endurance, charge generation, armor, life, and stuff. I think taking Destroyer is also really important. In addition to giving a lot of damage and attack speed, also gives you stun duration. So definitely take that. And then, yeah, I definitely take Panopticon just for the totem buffs. I wish they would just do away with totems completely for melee. It's really annoying to have to put down Protector and War Chief every time you want to do damage, but it is what it is. And then I also really like taking Weathered Hunter. Like if you look at so first of all, accuracy is really important in this build because it is PT. As long as your accuracy rating is higher than your life, you get 40% more damage. I think this wheel is really important because if you see here, my accuracy is like 5.8, 5,800. If I remove these 3 points, it goes down to 4,400. So this, in addition to giving you a lot of accuracy, also gives you a lot of elemental resistance. So I just feel that this 3 points is like really efficient to take, and it basically makes gearing a lot easier. So I would definitely recommend taking that. Other than that, the tree is basically pretty standard. This is a level 95 tree. It's basically pretty standard stuff. And then going on to the gear, this is also pretty straightforward. The weapon, you just want to get as much physical damage as you can. I don't even have a crafted mod here, but if you were to craft one, you would probably get focus, double damage. So like if you get this mod, for example, it basically just allows you to get a little bit more burst. I should probably just save that down. So yeah, it's pretty good. And then the helmet, I actually really like going for this because in my opinion, Juggernaut's main problem is damage, right? Because you already have a lot of defense. Juggernaut's problem is damage, and getting nearby enemies take 9% increased damage just seems like basically a free way to get a little bit more damage. And this item is really easy to get as well. You just, kill an Elder Guardian, loot some armor, helmet, base, and then you just reforge physical. So it's pretty easy to get this. If you were to go for a rare helmet instead, you could get like a helmet with like physical taken as elemental, but I don't feel that it's necessary on this build because you have so much physical res due to armor and endurance charges already. So I would definitely go for this helmet that has additional damage. And then the body, talked about that already, basically triple armor in conjunction with the new life mastery to get 15% max life in addition to ideally 3,000 armor on this. And then you also want to craft this with the Essence of Horror, I believe. No, Essence of Insanity. So gaining Onslaught when hit basically allows Boneshatter to have permanent Onslaught because you hit yourself with Boneshatter. So it's like perma Onslaught. Also, if you don't know this, you can actually re-roll these super essences in Harvest. If you re-roll Harvest, if you re-roll essences using Harvest, you can actually re-roll like a Delirium to an Insanity, for instance. So that's really easy to craft in SSF. you basically just spam Essence of Insanity until you get like 2 really good prefixes of armor. And then you can just like craft the third one. Or you could, if you were really crazy, you could do like, well, I mean, that's how you would do it, I guess. If you had like infinite divines, you could do like suffixes cannot be changed and then like reforge defense. But I don't know if you'll have infinite divines next league, so yeah. But anyway, this is not too hard to craft. And then for the implicits, I think Determination Mastery, Determination Aura Effect is the best because it gives you a lot of extra armor. For example, if I were to remove that, I would lose 8,000 armor, right? So definitely important to get that. And then also, of course, increased effect of non-curse auras, which also gives you just more armor and more damage. For the gloves, you basically just want attack speed accuracy. Again, every bit of accuracy you get is good because every additional bit of accuracy you get allows you to lower the level of your arrogance precision. And lowering the level of your precision gem allows you to have more life unreserved. So that's more effective HP. So every bit of accuracy matters. I would go for attack speed accuracy on the glove and then, life and armor. For the implicits, strike skills target one additional enemy, of course, for the melee splashing and, just general clear. And then 20% impale chance to get your impale chance to 100. Boots is also pretty straightforward, just movement, speed, life. I don't think you need any particular unveiled movement speed mods because you already have Onslaught from your body. And you don't need chill immunity because you're a Juggernaut. You're immune to action speed and movement speed slows. So you cannot be chilled or frozen on Juggernaut, which is great. So personally, I like to take this 40% reduced effective chill and shock mod. That in conjunction with the Soul of Garrukon Minor Pantheon basically allows you to achieve shock immunity, basically with only one mod of investment. Oh, my sinuses are killing me, sorry. Ugh. So yeah, I think that's just like really efficient. And then you can also get 4% action speed, which is great for clear, and also increased armor from helmet and gloves, which also gives you a little bit more armor. Not the biggest deal, but it's good. Instead of getting the increased armor mod, you could also get the Eldritch Implicit, which is 22%. It's like 20% increased damage with attacks supported with Ancestral Cry, because you do use Ancestral Cry, and getting 20% increased damage with hits obviously is good. But I personally would rather get this armor mod if possible because I'm a Juggernaut. Helmet, just nearby enemies take increased physical damage. Belt is just life, armor, and res. There is also an additional mod you could get on the belt, which is reduced enemy stun threshold. It's not the biggest deal ever, but it could allow you to stun more stronger enemies, but I personally don't think it makes that big of a difference. But like if you happen to have it, why not? And then, I like to use a Stygian Vice because why not? And then you can just use like a Murderous Eye Jewel. Murderous Eye Jewel is the best base for attacks, and you can just get like life and attack speed or something. And then for the flasks, Quicksilver with movement, and then Granite with armor, Basalt with additional res to counteract like curses and exposure, and then Quartz with attack speed is what I like to go for. And then I like to go for an instant life flask as well, which allows you to get bleed protection, and the instant recovery allows you to have like an oh shit button on Juggernaut, which is really good because you already have a lot of regen, so the slow life flask doesn't really make a big difference, so this is just really great. And then yeah, the gems are pretty straightforward as well. I personally really like linking Fortify instead of Impale support. You could also take these Fortify nodes here and then use Impale support and then free up a couple of points in Impale. But I tried it and it was actually suboptimal. It was suboptimal for me because like these nodes just don't give any damage, right? Like you have to invest 5 points here and it just doesn't even give you any damage at all. And then Impale support is also kind of weak. And these Impale nodes, in addition to giving you Impale chance, also give you cool stuff like, attack damage, increased impale effect, and so on and so forth. So personally, I like to link Fortify instead of Impale, but I guess you could also link Impale support, but I like Fortify better. Everything else is pretty standard. And then this CWDT is typical boneshatter stuff. It basically, anything you put in CWDT with boneshatter basically auto casts because you're always taking damage due to boneshatter hitting yourself. So I like to put Blood Rage, Vulnerability, and Molten Shell in here. Vulnerability basically allows you to, deal more damage, and then Molten Shell allows you to have better sustain. And then I really like having Blood Rage in here because it's basically a free buff. Like Juggernaut has so much life regen that Blood Rage basically doesn't even cost you any life, right? Like our base regen is 300, the base leech is 1,000, and then having Blood Rage on and off basically only drains you 200 additional life per second, which is not really a big difference at all because with your untiring ascendancy, you basically are allowed to have 5,000 life regen when you're at 40 stacks. So Blood Rage with 20 quality is basically a permanent 13% increased attack speed buff. In addition, it gives you leech, meaning that you don't have to get leech on the tree, which is great. And it also gives you frenzy charges on kill. And having frenzy charges just makes mapping a lot smoother to have 3 frenzy charges all the time. And especially in a thing like Crucible, having maximum frenzy charges I think is just going to be really great. So I would definitely have boneshatter in here. Unfortunately, having this link here in the weapon causes you to lose 10% armor from the 2-hand mastery. I wonder if there's actually... Wait, that's actually really suboptimal. I should actually put my melee totems in weapon 1 and then put this in my gloves, actually. Because you want 6 red gems in your weapon 1, actually. So yeah, we have War Chief, Protector, Multiple Totem, Maim, Berserk, and War Banner. And then that means I can change this to be red, and I basically gained 2,000 armor for free. Great. 80,000 armor now from this 2-hand mastery here, giving you 10% armor per red socket on your weapon. So that's great. And then your auras are going to be War Banner, Determination, Pride, and also Arrogance, Precision to help enable precise technique. And then Mobility is Leap Slam, Faster Attacks, Frostblink. Ancestral Cry is automated on the left mouse button, basically allowing you to have 4 strikes to clear with on top of and it also gives you armor and melee strike range, so it just makes your clear a lot better. And then Berserk is here for bursting down things like Guardians, Conquerors, map bosses, really strong essences. You basically just accumulate rage very gradually in mapping due to gaining 1 rage on hit. And then whenever you fight a strong enemy, you just pop Berserk. It's not a perma uptime Berserk, but it is still useful enough to where I would want to sacrifice a socket for it. I think it's just really good. And then these 4 melee totems, unfortunately, are mandatory. They just give so much damage. And then you can link Maim to make enemies take 10% increased physical damage. And that's basically it. This build does use 1 Val skill, which is Val Molten Shell, just, for defense. But it's basically pretty straightforward. With regard to mana sustain, I actually found that if you can get triple Elrion crafts on your rings and amulet, it allows you to have -21 to mana cost, -21 to mana cost, and it basically makes all your stuff free except for vulnerability. So as you can see here, boneshatter here is costing 0, Berserk doesn't even have a cost, the totem costs 0 each, and then Ancestral Cry costs 0, Frostblink costs 0, Leap Slam costs 0. So the only things that actually have a cost is, Blood Rage costs life, but of course that doesn't matter because we're Juggernaut. And then Vulnerability at level 5 costs 31 mana. So you basically, with this setup, you basically only have 1 skill that costs mana. And in the endgame PoB, you have 32 mana with 52 intelligence. So it basically allows you to perfectly cast vulnerability, right? Because you don't need this to be casting all the time. With 11 mana regen, you basically can cast vulnerability one time every 3 seconds, which just allows you to, yeah, it should be good enough, right? Because you don't need to be spam casting vulnerability. So I just thought that was interesting. I thought it was really interesting that having triple Elrion crafts on all your jewelry basically allows you to completely solve all of your mana problems without reservation efficiency, without the need to roll mana leech. So yeah, I think it's just really efficient. Another thing I wanted to talk about was so on your amulet, there's actually a % increased armor mod, which is like way better than I thought. So like losing Eternal Damnation sucks, but it's not that bad because this armor mod actually gives you like 5,000 additional armor. I was actually surprised it gave that much armor, and that's at tier 3. So you definitely want to try to get this mod if possible on your amulet. I would also really recommend adding 4 attribute catalysts to your amulet. This is assuming you have a perfectly blessed 24 dex and amulet. And the reason is because the extra 4 dex and int from the intrinsic catalyst basically allows you to run level 20 faster attacks instead of level 19, level 6 frost blink instead of level 5, which increases the blink range by a little bit, and also allows you, well, yeah, it just allows you to run like 1 level higher of certain gems, which is really annoying, but I mean, you know, it is what it is. What else did I want to talk about? I talked about accuracy already, right? So the item slots that you can roll accuracy are glove, amulet, and ring. You basically just want to get as much accuracy as you can. Ideally not on the amulet because you want to roll like, you know, armor on the amulet. But the more accuracy you have, basically the more freedom you have. In theory, if you somehow achieved like an incredible amount of accuracy and res, you could remove these 3 points, and then maybe you can like put those 3 points here and then sacrifice this attack mastery and put it here, allowing you to get intimidate from cleaving. And then you could take a free attack mastery, and getting another attack mastery could give you strike range for better clear. You know, monsters cannot block for expedition, or strike skills target 1 additional enemy, which is of course really good. So like if you are able to get like a ridiculous amount of accuracy somehow, there are optimizations that you can do. So that's really cool. What else? Oh yeah, also a couple of people have been floating around the idea of using Divine Flesh. Divine Flesh basically allows you to have 50% of elemental damage taken as chaos, which if you can cap your chaos res, which should not be too hard because you have double amethyst rings in this setup, you can basically half the amount of elemental damage that you take, which like doubles the effect of armor or something. So like you could do that, but personally I have not found a good socket that you could put Glorious Vanity in. Like putting the socket here erases a lot of your attributes, which is really annoying. And then putting it here or here is not only inefficient, but it also erases a lot of really good nodes for your build, and this is just, you know, bad as well. So I have not found a good socket that you can put Glorious Vanity in for this build, so personally I'm not going to be doing that. Another thing that you could do that I have done before is you take a Lethal Pride and you put it in this socket, and it basically gives you a lot of strength because you take a lot of stuff here, and it also gives you random implicits. In fact, we can just demonstrate that here. This is a tech that I think is actually really good. The passive does not matter because we're not going to be using the passive. We basically just get this, and then you get this. You put the the Lethal Pride in there, and it basically, as you can see here, if you look at my strength value, this gives me like 40 extra strength, right? Which is like extra life and like extra damage. And then you get like random implicits, which is really fun. This is just a random one that I pulled, so it's probably not even good, but you could potentially get some really cool implicits on here, 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 here. Maybe you could even get one here. Maybe you could even get one on Diamond Skin as well, which you could take for res if you really needed to. Lust for Carnage is not optimal to take because these nodes are not very powerful, but you could take these if you wanted to. If you get like a good implicit, you could even take one max endurance charges if you really wanted to. So it just opens up a lot of options, right? So like if you're level 97 and you're end game, you're in like end game and you have a really good lethal pride, you could totally put it here, and then maybe even take cleaving if it's good. It's just a really cool location for lethal pride to have it there, but definitely not necessary. So yeah, I wonder if I should just leave this in the POB. I'll leave it in the POB, but it's like, yeah, it's good, but definitely not mandatory. You can easily play this build without this at level 95 pretty optimally. So yeah, that's basically the build. Another thing is like some people have been saying, Brass Dome, but Brass Dome actually doesn't even work for this build because the strength provides no bonus to max life is a life tag modifier, which will disable this life mastery. So as it is right now, I would not recommend going Brass Dome. I just think I just don't think it's optimal. What else? For level, oh yeah, two more things. So for leveling, it's basically pretty easy. I mean, just look at Karn VODs, right? It's basically really straightforward. You basically just use Sunder until you get your first lab, which you pick up untiring. And then that gives you your sustain. And then you can basically use boneshatter from there on out. Another thing I want to talk about briefly is recoup. So recoup is kind of interesting because if you can get it, it's really good. For example, if you have 100% recoup, you will gain something like 4,000 life per second. And the math is that on boneshatter, so like on boneshatter, your attack rate is like 4.8, right? So you attack like 5 times per second, and every time you hit yourself, if you're at like 30 to 40 trauma stacks, you'll actually hit yourself for like I don't know, anywhere from like 1,000 to 2,000 damage per hit, right? Or like maybe like 1,000 to 1,500 damage per hit, right? So per second, you might receive like 4,000 self damage, and then recoup basically allows you to regenerate or allows you to regain that damage over 4 seconds. So for example, if you took 4,000 self damage per second, which is pretty normal for having maximum trauma stacks with this build, if you have 100% recoup, that would allow you to recover that 400 damage per second over 4 seconds. And then because recoup stacks and doesn't go away when you have full life, if you recoup over 4 seconds, that's basically a 4 times modifier on this value here, which would allow you to gain 4,000 life gained per second, which is pretty good because like when you're at max trauma, untiring only gives you like 4,000 regen anyway. So getting 100% recoup on this build will basically give you like double your sustain, which is pretty cool. However, the downside of this is that I personally found recoup really suboptimal to go for. I just think it's like really hard to get it. Like, what are the sources of recoup? Like, you can get recoup on the implicit on your body, but it's not optimal because then you lose aura effect. You could also get recoup as a implicit, Eldritch implicit on helmet, but then you lose damage, which is like, pretty bad on Juggernaut. There's also a recoup mastery here. 25% of damage taken recouped if leech was removed by filling unreserved life, which is always, because on this build you're constantly taking damage and constantly like being at full life because you're Juggernaut, boneshatter. So in theory you could get like 25% recoup here, but that's basically it because you really want to anoint forceful skewering for impale chance. So I personally found it to be really hard to get a lot of recoup. Like, even taking this 25%, I would not go for because the 3 nodes leading up to it are just not good. Like this is like 3% attack speed with 1 point, and then this is 3% attack speed for 1 point. It's like, what is that, right? So like recoup is good. I just personally found it very difficult to get, and I'm not sure it's worth it. But if you were hypothetically to go for this 25% recoup mod, it would basically allow you to have a quarter of this, which is basically 1,000 life gain per second. And with Juggernaut, with like 5,000 regen from Untiring, it would basically give you like 16% more sustain, which is decent. But again, I don't believe that getting 16% more sustain is worth these 4 terrible points for, especially considering this build is like already really min-maxed, right? Like if you look at this, in this endgame PoB, 4 points basically allows you to get 1 million DPS, right? Like every 4 points that I have allocated basically increase my DPS by 1 million. So it just seems really bad to use points needlessly like this. Like I'm not even going for a prismatic skin, right? Because if I were to take prismatic skin, I would be using 4 points to get +2 max res, which is 8% less elemental damage taken, right? Because every 1 max res is 4% less damage taken from 75. So this is like 8% less elemental damage taken, which is like good. It's good, but it's 4 points, right? And like, would you rather have 8% less elemental damage taken or 1 million damage, right? Personally, I'd rather have the 1 million damage because Juggernaut is like tanky already. So I personally am not going to go for a prismatic skin in this build, but you know, if you were doing content like Ubers or something, you might want to take that, but I personally still think damage is probably better. And yeah, so that's basically it. I think I basically covered everything now. Yeah. Damn, that was a lot of stuff. But yeah, I think this build's going to be really good. I think you're basically going to take like no damage in Crucible, and having the strikes auto target is just going to be really comfortable. And then this build, as it is right now, I can personally vouch that if you play this build in SSF within 1 week, you will be able to do Sim 30 deathless on this build, I believe. I think it's just that good. The only content that I struggled with on this build was specifically Ubers and Feared. Everything below that was a breeze. Like Breach Lords, you can stand still and attack and win. You know, like Elder Slayers, you can just like, you know, it's so easy because you take no damage. The only content that I was scared of was Feared, specifically like Adziri and Shaper. Because with Juggernaut, you don't want to build suppression, right? Because building suppression means you have to use evasion pieces. And then using evasion pieces means that your armor is less. And then that makes having less armor devalues Unbreakable, right? So I don't even think it's good to go suppression. In addition, suppression was nerfed and you can't even get +12 from this anymore. So I just wouldn't even go suppression. But then the downside with Juggernaut is that without suppression, if you take a really, really big elemental hit, such as Shaper Ball or Adziri Flame Blast or Adziri Stormcall, you basically don't get any damage mitigation from it because the armor loses effectiveness as the size of the hit increases, right? So like for a thing like Shaper Ball or like Adziri spells, you basically have very little mitigation against that on this build. So I am kind of, you know, afraid of doing Feared on this build. And then of course Ubers also completely destroy you with their big hits. So you do struggle a little bit on those, but I think with the end game setup, it is still possible to do Ubers on this build. I mean, Ben literally did Uber Cirrus on a 1-link boneshatter, so it is possible. But I mean, if you're going to be doing a lot of Ubers, you probably want to play a different build. Like nobody builds boneshatter to farm Ubers, right? And then Feared in SSF, like you only have to do it a couple times. If you want to do Feared like over and over again, you probably don't want to play boneshatter. But this build still is possible. It is possible to do Feared with this build. It's just a little bit harder because you have to like ramp your rage, you have to ramp your trauma, and then you have to not get hit by like anything. Basically, it's kind of challenging, but it is still doable. Yeah, that's basically the build. Oh yeah, and another thing that you could maybe do is if you really wanted to, you could take off like a couple of life nodes, like this one and this one and this one and this one, and you could get like more damage. Like you could in theory drop like 400 life to gain like an extra 1 million damage, but personally I'm not a fan of doing that because I just think life is like super important on boneshatter, but if you really wanted to go glass cannon, you could do that. But yeah, that's basically it. Oh, my voice is getting tired now and my sinuses are absolutely killing me, so I'm gonna have to end the video there. But yeah, I'm gonna be league starting this with next league. I may or may not end up making like some random videos as like build diaries or whatever. Basically just to like log my progress and like give progress updates on like gear progress and SSF and whatever. Share some interesting things that I found. Maybe. But yeah, if you have any comments or anything, feel free to, drop them down in the comments. I do read everyone, so, you know, looking forward to seeing if there's any feedback. Other than boneshatter, I don't really know what I'll play next league. Prismatic Burst seems really cool, but they haven't released the gem data yet, so I just don't know. Other than that, I wish they would have like buffed underutilized skills or introduced more new skills, because right now I don't really believe that the changes in 3.21 enable a meta shift. I think the meta is basically the same as before, and I don't think any new super crazy build is like suddenly introduced into the game right now, which is kind of sad because I was really looking forward to playing something different. But we'll see. Maybe Prismatic Burst is cool, or maybe I find like a really nice mod on a weapon from the Crucible item tree and that enables something fun. I don't know, but yeah, okay, I'm gonna leave it there. Let me know if you have any comments, questions, or whatever. And yeah, thanks for watching.